Okay. I guess I'll start on time. Everyone's nice and early, so that's good. So yeah, welcome to the First Time Contributors Workshop. And I'll get to myself in a second, but I'd like to remind everybody, all of these slides are available. There's going to be a link, there's going to be a QR code, so you don't have to like sit there and try and type out or take photos or anything like that. You can just grab the link at the end. So I'd rather you just pay attention and listen, and don't worry so much about trying to write everything down, because it's going to be easy to grab that afterwards. One of the main ways that we work with contributions is communicating via Slack. So one of the first things that we will need to have is have Slack set up. So if you go to drupal.org/Slack and we go to the first contribution channel, there will be people there who can help you doing some contributions. There'll be people there who are also doing contributions for the first time. So that is a great first place to go. And I'm going to remind people about the Slack channel later on. But that's one of the first things that we want to remind people about, is that is the place to go to find out about first-time contributions. So yeah, as I said, First-Time Contributors Workshop. My name is Chris Darke. That's D-A-R-K-E. And I'll be on Slack as Chris Darke. I'll be on D.O as Chris Darke. I speak English and Spanish. That's basically enough about me. The link to the slide deck is there. It's bit.ly/dcon25atl. But it's also a QR code at the last slide, so you don't even have to copy it down there. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about why we should be contributing, the benefits, both for ourselves and for the community, the types of contributions that we can do, the different initiatives that we have going on that require contributions. We've got the issue queue, basic rules and the etiquette. We've got merge requests and the tooling and documentation. So those are basically what we're going to go through during these 45 minutes, which I forgot to start my stopwatch on. There we go. So first question. Who's in this room? Who are you? It could be somebody who's new to the world of Drupal. You're here for your first time. Maybe you just started working on Drupal and somebody said, come along to DrupalCon. It could be somebody who's been around forever, but you've never done any actual contrib. You've just been using Drupal, but you've never contributed back. It could be people who've been contributing for a long time, but maybe you want to find a different way of contributing. It could be that last time that you did contributions was 5 years ago and things have moved on a bit, and you want to find out what's the new processes. So yeah, basically anybody is welcome in this room. Anybody can take some value out of this. So yeah, why should we contribute? Basically, if you depend on open source depends on you. That's a very basic premise of open source, and it's something that we all try to remember every day. Your contributions are valuable. It doesn't matter if you're doing like a rewrite of the whole form API, or if you are going and adding the correct grammar in a line of documentation. They're all super valuable contributions. And also, contributing makes you more of an integrated part of the Drupal community. You could be working on a small part of a bigger problem that is part of an initiative that they're going to show on the keynote, and you are working with people who maybe you've seen talking before, and suddenly you're working side to side with them and collaborating together. You're part of that community. If you work for an agency, this is a good time to remind agency owners, your bosses or yourselves, if you're the owners of agencies, that it's a great time for agencies to give back. It's, you know, Drupal depends on this sharing of knowledge, of skills. It's a good, you know, thing to be a good corporate citizen and give back to the tool that feeds us. It's also very useful for talent recruitment. People who are looking for a new job, maybe they hear that your agency does a lot of contrib, and they might prefer to come work there than at some other place that maybe pays a bit more but isn't at all involved in contrib. And yeah, people just like coming to these things and going to parties and, you know, meeting a lot of people and learning some stuff and sharing some stuff. So they're all great reasons to do some contribution. If you haven't got a Drupal.org login, it's going to be very hard to do any contribution without it. So if you haven't got a login, please go to /user/register on Drupal.org, or just look for the little user icon at the top. And sorry, that's the old graphics. I've not updated it since they put in the new Drupal CMS style graphics. But yeah, if you log in, maybe in the short period of time, you might be marked as a robot. So if you want to actually do some of the stuff we'll show later on, you might need to get your user verified. And if you reach out to one of us mentors, people standing around the room, if you raise your hands if you're a mentor, raise your hand if you can also verify users. You can, I think you can. Is it? Yeah, there's a few of us who can verify users. So if you create an account and it says, oh, you know, we don't know if you're a real user or not, reach out to one of us and we can verify you. But yeah, for most things in contribution, you'll need that account. And that profile, you'll have your name, your place of work, maybe a profile photo, social links, and you can also there tag your mentors. So if you come to the mentored contribution tomorrow and you are mentored by somebody, you can add them as your mentor onto the profile, and it adds you into that network. It's a bit kind of like LinkedIn and stuff. You know, you'll get those connections. I would like to remind everybody right now that contributions are all kinds, right? You can contribute a lot without coding. Some people think, oh, I'd love to contribute, but I'm not a developer, and that's absolutely fine. You do not need to be a developer to contribute. There's tons of different ways. You can be a huge asset to the project without ever writing a line of code. Yeah, just like to remind everybody that. So tomorrow, when we do the mentored contribution, we're going to be following a process that works quite well. It works well for most people. If you feel like you want to do it in a different way, you can always work around that. But generally, we would have people together on a specific table where they might find something to work on together. There might already be a topic for the table, or it might be that we haven't found a topic yet and you're going to decide on one together. But generally, we're going to want people together on a table working as a team, find something to work on, or as I said, there might already be a topic for the table. If we're using the Drupal issue queue, then we'll be making sure that everybody who's together working on the issue updates the issue. And everyone's going to decide what their tasks are going to be, what each person is going to do on this thing that is going to be done. And then during the course of the event, everyone's going to make sure that the issue is updated, that they're keeping track of what everyone is doing. And after the event is over, if that issue hasn't been resolved, keep working on it. And if it has, keep finding something new to work on. We're going to be celebrating all of the successes at the end of the day, so it'd be great to, you know, if you can get that issue sorted out, and you know, it's part of the list of successes for the day. It's great. It's very exciting. And yeah, so now we're going to talk about the types of contributions. So we've got the community side of things, which is like improving documentation, issue triage, translations, reviewing content, marketing, event organization, all of these things that are not code related. They are more just like everything else other than code, basically. These are things that we often really need a lot of and we don't get enough of because there's a lot of focus on the code side of things. You'll probably know if you've been to look for something on Drupal.org, like you're trying to find out about the latest Form API documentation, it's horrendously out of date. It's actually better to go to Drupal 7 Form API documentation because it's not been kept up to date, because people aren't improving the documentation, because there's more focus on the code. So these types of contributions on the community documentation and things like that, and the marketing, they're really, really valuable. So if you've got an interest in one of these, please reach out to one of the mentors, and we can find something for you to work on. The other types of contributions is the code-based contributions. So we've got experimental features that need testing, creation of merge requests, testing merge requests, providing feedback. And yeah, as I said, documentation is one of the big areas that needs work. And if you actually go to drupal.org/documentation, that's like the central point where we can find all the different areas of documentation. We have these documentation guides. These are the official documentation for Drupal, and they are a bit more structured. They're a bit harder to work on. We have the Drupal user guide and the Drupal CMS user guide. These two types of documentation, some of them are being worked on by, I think there's one company who's being sponsored to work on the CMS user guide, but you can still contribute to these. But you do need to work on ASCII doc and propose changes in the file. It's a bit complicated to work on, but it's still doable. So if you see something in the Drupal user guide or the CMS user guide that you think, oh, this needs changing, is entirely a process for that. It's written in text at the bottom of each page. There's instructions on how to work on it. And then there's the community side of documentation, which is all of the stuff that we can easily update and easily keep, in process. And this is like the wiki style of documentation. And most of the content that we deal with on the site in terms of documentation is the community side. If you go to some community documentation section and you are already a registered user and you've got your user confirmed, you'll see a little edit button, and you can just click on the edit button and go and make changes. The documentation guides that are there, you might have some stuff that's for like contrib, that's also editable. So you'd have like documentation about different modules that, again, often needs a lot of work. These are great areas for contribution. As I said, we've got the various different guides for Drupal.org as well. So you've got like user accounts, content guidelines, marketplace guidelines, all these sorts of things which are about using Drupal.org itself. Again, something that needs a lot of documentation and updates. And you can see there's the edit button. You just click on that, you make a change, you just say why you're making the change, and that's fine. If you've made a mistake and it's not the right thing, somebody will just say, oh, hey, yeah, I think it's actually probably more like this, and then no one's going to tell you off unless you're abusing it. People just really want to see everyone adding more documentation in there. So it would be really appreciated if you are doing some stuff tomorrow and you're doing maybe, say, a code contribution, but you need some docs for that, and you go into documentation and you see there's something that's missing, just go ahead and just change it right there if you have time. So that's a really massive area of contribution that we all should be striving to do more of. One of the other big places that needs a lot of contribution is translations. So if you go to localize.drupal.org, you will find a list of all the different translations, all the different languages that exist on the Drupal system. and there'll be a chart basically that shows the sort of percentage of completion of each language. Now, some languages have quite a decent amount of completion, like Spanish, but there might be some languages that only have like 10% completion. And so what will happen is that if you load up Drupal in that language, most of the content is still in English, and there's just a very small part of the fields and things that are in the specified language. So you can, if you speak a language and you want to contribute that way, you can join a team, and there'll be like a documentation for what the process is for that team, and people can then start to just translate interface text and things like that. We actually will have a translation table at the mentor contribution tomorrow. And so we'll have people there to guide the translation efforts, because, again, don't get enough of that. Another area of contribution that is of a different kind is a financial contribution to the DA. So if you go to drupal.org/association, you can become a member of the DA, and you can therefore contribute financially, which helps things like this event. So, okay. Another one form of contribution that we definitely desperately need is marketing. Community/promote-Drupal on Drupal.org is the marketing side of things. And it could be even promoting Drupal conference things, or promoting camps. It could be promoting, contribution itself, all forms of marketing. It could be promoting Drupal CMS. There's a lot of stuff where we've been seeing in the keynotes recently where, there's a lot of exposure from other competing ecosystems. We don't see adverts on YouTubers' channels where they're talking about Drupal CMS, right? So there's a lot of space for marketing contributions. And some of that is, as I said, promote Drupal. So maybe you're good at, presentations, at, building these sorts of things. I'm terrible at these. I'm just copying the slides. But it could be like social media. So we've recently been getting some people, creating social media posts even for like doing the mentorship that we do. It could be photography, logo creation. So if you feel like you have a skill set in that, please reach out to one of us, because, again, it's something we desperately need. As I said, there's various different marketing roles that we can utilize. So there's also the Drupal Recording Initiative, which goes through and records all of these different events, and so you can get these sessions recorded and up onto YouTube. Yeah. So now we're heading back towards the code a bit more and talking about the issue queue. The issue queue is kind of like a big to-do list, really. It's not necessarily a problem, like an issue. It could just be a plan or a task, or there's a bug maybe. But the issue queue itself is just our name for the task list of things to do. We have issue queues for core. We have issue queues for every single one of the modules. We have all sorts of issue queues. And for those of you who aren't aware of the differences between core and contrib, if I'm talking about core and contrib, core being the core Drupal code base itself, and contrib being all of the things that surround that core, which allow you to extend it. So those things would be the distributions, the themes, the recipes, modules, all sorts of anything that basically you hear them say, oh, just install this thing. A lot of it is contrib. And so we work mostly with the core stuff in the mentor contribution, but we also work with some of the contrib as well when it has to do with like Drupal CMS and things like that, where we've got certain contrib things that we're plugging in, adding in to make Drupal CMS. One of the things that we want to remind people of is that you're going to be starting small, obviously. You don't want to take your first task to be something that's going to take 6 months to complete. We want you to learn the process, learn like the step-by-steps of getting a task completed and going through the contrib process, finding something that's not onerous, something that you can just accomplish and see it move through pretty quickly. So it could be something like reporting an issue, seeing that you found a bug somewhere and that this is the description of the bug, here's where I found it, blah, blah, blah. All of that, that in itself is really important. If nobody else has reported it before, it's important. It could be updating an issue. So say you've seen an issue and you've tested it and it's, you can confirm that it is still happening in a new version, you could do that. Triaging issues, so maybe you are going through and looking and finding stuff that's no longer relevant or things that actually need to be updated, like, oh, this issue needs to be updated because it's missing next steps. It could be creating merge requests, which is, for those of you who aren't conversant with the code side of things, is where you make a code change and then you ask that code change to be merged into the main project. It could be providing feedback. So, oh, I agree with this documentation change, that text looks good, or this graphical change makes sense, or disagree. Oh, this graphical change is problematic because it causes some issues with accessibility. It could be testing, so going and testing out what somebody else has already done to confirm whether or not that has fixed the problem. So all of these are quite small, accomplishable tasks, but they're great first tasks because you can kind of get through them fairly quickly without just being stuck in a rut or like forgetting like where you even started. I've certainly had cases where I've got long-standing issues that 6 months down the line I'm like, oh, what was that again? Like it's been so long and it's just dragged on. So yeah. So the issue queue 101. The issue queue itself kind of looks like that. It's like a long list of different issues with different colors. I'll go into the zoom in a bit in a moment, but it's basically you've got a list of different issues in different states. You've got some filters at the top, and you can then go and query down the filter so you can find something that's of a specific project or a specific priority or category or whatever. Normally on all of the projects, so in core and in contrib, if you go to a project on the right-hand side, there'll be a gray bar and it'll have a list of issues and you can click on it to get to them. You can go to project/issues/Drupal to go to the main Drupal core issue list. But we also have a curated list of issues that are good for first-time contribution. So we take time to go through all the issues and find things that are good first contribution tasks, and we tag them with a tag called novice. Now, that doesn't mean that you're a novice developer, or novice contributor. It defines that it's a good, simple, straightforward task. So if you go to drupal.org/novice-issues, that's a redirect to the filtered list of novice issues. In the screenshot, you'll say it says issues for Drupal core, but now that list includes not just Drupal core because we have things from Drupal CMS and things like that which aren't core. So it might not look exactly like this screenshot, but it's pretty much exactly the same. And yeah, as I said, in the issue list, we've got these filters at the top. So you can filter by open issues and search for different categories. If you are trying to find a specific problem that you've detected and you want to create an issue for it, the first thing you need to do is search through the issue queue to see if you can find the issue already. So these filters are good if you're trying to find if somebody has already reported something before you report it. You also have a advanced search. So you can, if you click on the advanced search, it will give you these extra filters. So you can, extend what you're searching on, try and find on a specific component, search on specific issue tags and things like that. So as I mentioned, we tag all the issues for Drupal contributions, for first-time contributions. We tag them novice, but we also, for the event for tomorrow, we tag them as Atlanta 2025. So we use the tagging for that sort of thing. There'll be issues that might show up as novice that maybe were tagged a long time ago, and maybe they no longer deserve that tag. We try to clear them out, but we don't always manage to. And these are things where it's like maybe it's a project that's not actively maintained, so somebody who's the maintainer of a project might have left the community or is just too busy, and they aren't updating things, and something has just been sitting around for 2 years. It's probably not a good thing to start on. You might have issues that are marked as won't fix, and it's probably best not to look at those because somebody's obviously disagreeing with why that should be an issue. There's issues that maybe, as I said, maybe they're 2 years old, 3 years old. It's probably something that hasn't moved quickly because it's not that straightforward. You might have some that have like tons of comments. I've found issues that have like 6, 7 pages of comments, and trying to parse through what everybody has conversed about on the problem is a big task. It's really hard to parse that. If it's gone from like needs review back to needs work, back to needs review, that's to needs work a lot, again, it's one of these things where obviously the problem is not that straightforward. Also, probably best not to go straight for like a critical task. Maybe go for like a normal or minor task. Sorry, anatomy of the issue. Yeah, at this point I need to bring up another screen. Give me a sec. I need to get my mouse around here. There we go. Sorry, I've got way too many windows. There we go. So this is like what one of the issues might look like. And so here we've got an issue that's part of Drupal core, and it's currently on 11.x dev, so it's the latest dev version of 11. It's a normal priority task, and it's not assigned to anybody. And I'd like to remind, if you're in Drupal core and you're looking at an issue, please don't assign it to yourself. These should only be assigned by people who are like maintainers, so like one of the core committers. If you're working on something, we'll tell you how to tag yourself on it, but please don't assign yourself. We'll see there's a problem of motivation, and a lot of the times what we need to do is just read through and see what is actually going on here. Maybe there's like some next steps, maybe there isn't any next steps, maybe you need to go and read the comments down below, and there might be a load of comments going on about what's happening. But ideally, you should be able to find out from this top section here what is the problem and how it's going to be resolved. Then after that, you'll have these sections here, which are the issue forks. So if there's like different versions of the code, different versions of the proposed solution, they'll show up there. You'll have things like merge requests that you can spin up, that you can actually do previews on. Then after that, there'll be all of these comments. So there's a lot of comments on this one for a very small example task because it's just a test task. But you often will want to go to the bottom and look at the last few comments and see what the last few people have been saying. One of the things that we often do is read through the comments and see if it still matches the problem and the solution. And maybe we see down here that 3 people have already made the fix, but it hasn't been tested. So we go up and we can go, okay, well, I can edit this, and I can add, next steps, test. So this is what the issues generally look like. So anything that we're going to be dealing with the issue queue, we'll be looking at these sorts of pages. And again, don't feel afraid. If you want to add a comment in and say like, oh, this looks like it needs some clarification or something like that, feel free. Again, just let's not abuse the system, but it's there for you to communicate with. So I'm going to go back to there we go. As I said, I was mentioning merge requests there. If any of you have been around for a while, you might remember the patches, which is the files that show all of the changes that are happening in a piece of code, and you take the patch and you apply the patch locally, and it makes the changes. And we aren't using those anymore. If you still see patches, Some people on contrib stuff are still using patches. We try not to use them. So if you see a patch, you can maybe make a merge request out of that patch. But from 2020 onwards, we are using merge requests, which is a lot easier for multiple people to work together on the code in, and it will help with the tools that we see later on. So when we do a fork and a merge request, we're basically forking the project. So we're forking Drupal core or one of the contrib modules, and we're creating a branch on that fork for the current issue. So it could be like issue number 123456 dash colors are wrong on title, and then we would make changes in that branch. So you might make a CSS change on that branch that fixes that, and then you would open a merge request where you take that committed change and you say, please, can this go back into the main project? And that allows people to then review that change and maybe make another change on top of that, and then approve it and then get it through merged in. A lot of that depends on having the right tools. So if you go to drupal.org/tools, you will find out about the different tools that we have available or that you could consider installing on your own machines. So one of the things that we're going to be using tomorrow, and I'll go through it in a minute, is DrupalPod, which is effectively a full development stack on your browser. You can run it on your iPad if you want to. It's really useful for these sorts of events where we don't want everybody trying to install a lot of software on their machines right there and then. We have collective trauma over people spending 3 hours trying to install stuff, and people running around with USB keys with install files on them, and let's not go back there. So DrupalPod runs on the cloud. It's relatively low on bandwidth, and people can just get up and running within 15 minutes. There's also local development environments. So if you've got a local development environment already set up, say you've got DDev on your machine, or Lando, or Docsal, or whatever, or MAMP, you can use that. Obviously, if you have something that maybe the mentors aren't particularly well versed with the configuration of, and there's a problem with that, we might not be able to resolve all of your problems right there. Whereas like if it's on DrupalPod, maybe it's a bit quicker to resolve. So it's just something to bear in mind. We have simplytest.me, which is a site where you can just take a contrib module or core, whatever version, with a patch or merge request, and ask it to build an environment with that. And so it'll build up the environment, and then you can test it. So you can test out. I don't use it that much anymore, but I used to use it to find out whether or not a problem I have on my local is actually a problem with the code or with my own stuff. And so I'll spin it up on simplytest and be like, oh, OK, it works on there, so it must be a problem with my thing. There's also Tugboat QA, which is what is used for the previews on the issue queue. So if you have a merge request, one of the great things about that is it allows the system to spin up a live preview. So you can then click on that and go and see it in action and find out whether or not it actually resolved it. So if somebody made a merge request for the layout positioning of something on the screen, and you could see that before when it went to mobile, it was broken, and then you go to the live preview and you see it's no longer broken. You can, you're right there, you're testing it, and you haven't had to, load up any code or anything. We're also going to be looking at Drupal Forge tomorrow, which is hopefully our replacement for DrupalPod. The reason being that due to the background technology behind DrupalPod is being shut down next month. So this will be the last time we use DrupalPod. But we'll also have a table working on Drupal Forge, which hopefully we will use going forwards. So if you want to test out these new tools, there'll be a table for that. And yeah, as I said, DrupalPod is what we will be encouraging if you haven't got a local system or you want to try it out, fair enough. You only really need a Chrome or Firefox extension, a browser extension, and you then go to any issue and you can spin up a DrupalPod instance, which will allow you to work on that code on the browser. It'll give you like a VS Code or PHP Storm development environment with live previews, with shareable live previews, with shareable development environments that you can then share amongst other people you're working on the task with. It'll have like debugging. It has a lot of, basically everything you need to fix or work on the bug. So I'm just going to play a quick little video. Hopefully this works. Yeah. So if you go to DrupalPod.com, and I hope it's still DrupalPod.com. I made this video like a year ago, but effectively you've got the extension, and it's that little blue icon at the top that I've got. So if you go to an issue, you can see there's a fork there, and you click on the DrupalPod icon, you can choose the branch that is on that fork. You choose the version of Drupal, you choose your install profile, and in this case, logging in with GitHub. And it says I'm not authenticated because I need to go and authorize. So the first time you do this, you need to authorize Gitpod. And after you've done that, it lets you spin up an instance. And I have some bits which are a bit fast forwarded because it can take a few minutes. And then it is going to open up this workspace. And this is, if you've worked with VS Code, you'll recognize this. It's just basically a VS Code editor, but on your browser. And there's some instructions that will tell you, where all the different tools are. And there's like a command line at the bottom that's showing the process where it's building everything. And to be clear, if you aren't a developer, you can still use this to test something out because this has live previews. You could just spin up some of these merge requests using DrupalPod, and then you'll have the preview as a link that you can then open up and play around with it. But yeah, so now you see there's code on the left, and there's the live preview on the right. And you can open your files, you can go edit things, you can you can commit code. Everything is there in the project browser on the left. And then down below, you've got your terminals, your commands, so you can run commands below. So you can run your drush commands or whatever. So it's all there in the browser, and you can then share those workspaces. So one of the other things that we'll be doing tomorrow when we're working together as a team is when we find an issue, we are all going to comment on the issue. I'm here at DrupalCon. I'm going to be working on this issue for the day. My mentor is Matt. And everybody is going to comment on that issue, and that way you're tagged on the issue. So then moving forwards, when there's any progress on that, you'll get notified. And one of the other things that we'll be doing is using Slack in the first contribute channel to post in that issue link into Slack. And then everybody who's working on the issue together can comment on the thread in Slack about it. And then using DrupalPod, we can share that work link, that workspace link. So say I'm halfway through working on the code, and somebody else says, oh, let me help with that. I can just pass you the development environment, and they can carry on working on it. And I can share the live preview as well, so somebody else can be doing the testing, and they can load up the live preview on their own machine, preview what we're doing in real time, and see, oh, yeah, that's looking great. Let me give you some feedback on that. So those links, that sort of stuff coming through from DrupalPod is really handy. Why is it not going to the next one? Oh, is it because sorry, I'm on the wrong thingy now. There we go. Nope, that's what I was just on. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my slides suddenly. But yeah, so during the contribution, we're also going to be talking about the initiatives, and we might have tables for some of the initiatives. So if we remember the Starshot initiative, there's a lot of work happening in that, things like recipes and things like that. So there'll be tables where we are working on, hopefully, some issues for recipes. which is one of those big Starshot initiatives. We also have various community initiatives that have work that we're hopefully going to be having tables for. I'm not sure if Bug Smash is going to have a table, but there's various different tables we're going to have where we're going to be working on some of these things. There's also a list of contribution videos. So if you go to bit.ly/Drupal-contribute, you can watch videos about all of these topics. So if you wanted to get a bit more clarification about something, or you just wanted to re-watch something I've talked about, if you go to Drupal-contribute, it's a YouTube playlist. And there'll be videos about issue forking, about code contributions, non-code contributions, a more in-depth preview of DrupalPod. Also on these slides, there's resources for the issue queue etiquette, for example. So if you go to these links, you'll find different things about what to do and what not to do on the issue queue, about how to report an issue, for example, searching the queue, all sorts of resources that you can get to on those links. And yeah, so there's a QR code for the slides, and I would like to thank Electric Citizen for sponsoring the first-time contribution workshops. And yeah, thank you. That's all. And yeah. And if there's any questions or feedback, please raise your hand. We go. Yep. Yes, so, yeah. So the question was, we've talked about DrupalForge being the replacement for DrupalPod. Effectively, and what's the workflow for that? Effectively, it's going to be very, very similar. The maintainers of DrupalForge have actually cloned DrupalPod as a code base and worked on it from there, so it's starting from the same principles. So again, it will just spin up from an issue, and you'll be able to have that development environment. One caveat is it doesn't support some of the tooling that DrupalPod does, so you won't get PHP Storm on the browser, and you won't get VS Code local. You'll only get VS Code remote. But apart from that, it should be pretty much exactly the same thing. DrupalForge is actually based around a non-profit, so hopefully it's going to have a bit more support. Gitpod was what DrupalPod ran from, and that was a sort of profit-based thing, and they've been shutting down some of the services, and which is why it's going away. So by having something that's not dependent on another service, because DrupalForge is going to be running natively on AWS, and we can just spin up instances for it, it should remove that limitation. Thanks. Any other questions? No? Awesome. So yeah, hopefully we will see you all tomorrow. We start doing the mentored contribution at 8 in the morning, which is really exciting because we have to be there 30 minutes before that. So we might be all drinking a lot of coffee first thing in the morning, but we will have all these different tables for different topics. We'll have documentation, we'll have SDC, general core issues, all sorts of different areas of contribution. And you can come along, meet some people, make some friends, and hopefully, yeah, get your hand in some contribution of some kind. There'll be food at some point, and then at the end of the day, we'll have some celebrations of the things that we have accomplished. So yeah, thank you very much.